Hello Scouts, my name is Mike and I'll be working on the first part of Baloo the Builder with you. We're going to discover about some hand tools. First thing we want to talk about when we're talking about hand tools is our own personal safety, our eyes most importantly. There's different kinds of safety goggles. I have a pair of safety glasses on myself here with extra shields on the side to keep debris from entering the sides and getting in my eyes. The other part is your hands. You don't want them cut or to get splinters. You may need to use gloves. If the piece is very rough, you might want gloves. The first thing we're going to talk about is a hammer. A hammer consists of a handle that you hold on to, the claw, which is used for pulling nails or prying a board or something up, not for a hatchet or cutting wood. The head is all the metal part of the hammer, and you have the face, the part that you're supposed to hit the nail with. Now, when working with a hammer and nails, you want to hold the nail in place and tap lightly to get it started. And be careful not to hit your other hand. Be mindful. Once you have the nails upright enough that you think it will stay in place, then you can hit it. Hammer it in. If it's in the wrong place, or it needs to come out, you can use the claw to pull that nail back out. And you can reposition the board where it needs to be and put a new nail in. You go ahead and hammer it in. The next thing we're going to talk about are screwdrivers. There are all different kinds of screws. We'll start out with a Phillips screwdriver. They come in different sizes. Looks like a little cross on the end, pointy cross. And it has a screw head that matches. And we're going to stick that in there. You twist counterclockwise to pull the screw out. And if you wanted to put the screw back in, it's clockwise. You need to put a little bit of pressure holding down against the screw and twist the handle and drive the screw in as deep as it needs to go. The other kind of screwdriver discussed are the flat screwdriver or slotted screwdriver. Now, you might not come across a lot of slotted screws nowadays, but it's still the #1 screwdriver to have around because of the usefulness of taking things apart. And it works the same way. Out. In. Today, there are things called torque screwdrivers or Torx bits, or T15 and T25 and different size screws. They look like a little star. And they make various screwdrivers just for them. It's also what would be called a Pierce-Robertson or a clutch head, which is square. And these screws work the same way. Counterclockwise turns them out, and clockwise turns them back in. Now, if you find these grooves and you don't necessarily have the right bit in a pinch, you can use an Allen wrench. Allen wrench, you see them come in a lot of cabinet sets and stuff. They hold different fasteners together, but it's a hex-sided key. And sometimes you can use those to turn a screw in or out. Counterclockwise is out and clockwise is in. The other thing to say about screwdrivers is you can get just a handle with a bit that can be changed to fit all these different screwdrivers. You can get bits with lots and lots of different sizes, shapes, lengths. In the book, they talk about a brace and a bit. Now, really, I haven't seen anybody use one of these in a long time. I use it quite a bit, but that's a different story. Needing to know how to put a hole in something without power this is the way to do it. Today we have drills and cordless tools that can do this, but out in the woods, you're not going to have that. But with this, you can still manually drill a hole in a piece of wood. You have a hole in your wood. Now, what might be more practical is you take the same screwdriver handle that we discussed earlier, and they make drill bits with a hex shank on them that will fit them power drills and stuff today. And you can put that right in your screwdriver handle, and you can use that clockwise to drill a hole in a piece of wood that you might need to drill a hole in. The other thing to do is sizing your wood, and to do that you need a handsaw. A lot of times it comes in handy to have a few other things before you use your handsaw. You have the back, you have the teeth along the edge there. They're very sharp, so be careful not to touch them or catch them on the side of your clothes or the table. They're very sharp and they'll scratch things and cut things. You have the toe. This saw doesn't have it, but the back of the saw blade is the heel, and you have the handle. Now, before we cut something, I'm going to jump ahead in the book, and we're going to talk a little bit about some clamps. There's different kinds of clamps that you can use to secure a piece of wood to a table. There's bar clamps that work on a screw principle. The screw tightens and makes it tighter, and the bar adjusts. It can be as simple as a spring clamp, or big and bulky as a wooden clamp. A wooden clamp has two opposite turning screws, so you can turn it smaller or larger, and then tweak the clamp the tightness with one handle. It's also a C-clamp. You use the same thing. I'm using it right now to hold this vise in place. This would be another way you could hold a piece of wood, is with a vise. Just clamps in there. You got a bar here to tighten it up. Got the jaws, the base. Now once you have the piece clamped, you can go back when you safely make a cut. To make a cut with a saw, you first need to know where you're going to cut. We'll do that real quick here. We'll make a mark. And you use the saw blade and you put it next to your cut where you want it to be. And you draw it back on a corner on a 45 degree. And you do that a few times, it'll make a little notch. And once you got a little notch there, you know your blade is going to stay in that position along the line. You can start pushing it forward and back, and forward and back. Long, slow, even strokes all the way. Use both hands on the saw handle so you don't have the other one in the way of the saw blade. Less likely to get cut. And just like that, the wood is cut. Another kind of saw would be a coping saw. Now, a coping saw, this is probably the most useful saw for you as a Cub Scout to make your pine wood derby car. Because with this thin blade, you can cut different curvatures. You can cut holes in things. You can cut shapes like this. And it works the same way, where you have to start a notch. This one happens to be curved the opposite direction. So this one I'm going to push to get a cut started. And then once I got the cut started, I can pull. And you can cut. And with this big loop, it allows you to make a curved cut. And you can have a little more shape to your cut. Now if you were going to cut, another kind of saw I use is this. Is a Japanese saw, and it's a pole saw too. It cuts on the pole. If you was needing to cut off a bolt or something metal, you would use a hacksaw. And it works on the same principle. You get the cut started, and then you finish with your push. Another thing you need to have is the pencil. You gotta have a pencil or a pen or something to mark your material with, so you know what you're cutting or where you're nailing or where you're putting your holes, you're drilling your holes. And to figure those things out, we use things like a combination square, or they might be a speed square. I call it a speed square. And a tape measure, so you can measure things. Another useful tool sometimes is a metal rule or a ruler. Ruler, we can use that for a straight edge, to draw a line. We can use that to measure with. we need to make something a certain length, we can use the tape measure. We can measure that to the length we need. Say we need 6 inches, you put a mark at 6 inches. And we can take our handy square and make a mark on there. And we know where our square is at 6 inches. We can put that in our vise, or we can clamp that to a table. We can go ahead and cut that off where we need it to be cut off. Now, after I made that cut, there's a lot of splinters and sharp edges. You can take some sandpaper and you can sand those edges. Another way to do it would be take some of that same sandpaper and you can either glue it. In this case, I'm just going to use a stapler. Sandpaper on a block of wood or block of rubber or something flat, the shape that you want to be sanded, and you can use that to sand your edges that way. Another thing we need to talk about is what happens if one of these splinters gets in my finger, or the saw slips and I cut myself. Well, when you're working with these things, you have to keep that in mind, that that may happen, and it's a good idea to keep a small first aid kit around. I personally keep around a few Band-Aids, some sterile wipes, a little bit of Neosporin, and I also have some tweezers. These things are handy to have around just in case. If the cut is more serious, of course you need to go someplace else. You need to go inside and get more help, be it through your parents or calling an ambulance, calling 911. But most things in a shop, you should be able to take care of yourself. Minor cuts and stuff, you have to use a little bit of common sense and be careful, because tools are not toys, they're tools. I think that's all I got.